Hey, friends, and welcome back to the podcast. Literally friends, because we have one of my very good friends on the podcast today, Mallory Band. We're going to be talking about the interplay of ADHD and disordered eating behaviors, and we might get into some gut stuff as well. But before we even dig into that, Mallory, I would love for you to introduce yourself a little bit and tell people how you got to be an executive function coach.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, both of you, for having me. I'm happy to be here. Yeah,
We're excited.
thank you. Thank you. So, out of college, I studied education. So, I was a teacher for maybe the first 6 years post graduation, and that was great. I went to grad school right before the pandemic and decided I was going to step away from teaching and go finish my degree full time. I think that during grad school is when I really started to understand like the neuroscience, my own neurobiology and science of how my brain is wired. Like, whoa, so many things started to make sense. I always knew I had ADHD. I always knew I had anxiety. I didn't know what that actually meant. I was always a star student and had friends, but didn't know that it was not necessarily typical to be masking all day at school to keep it together. And I would get home and would just completely derail, would be screaming, and my parents would have a huge emotional outburst and frustration and just really big emotions. So many of, especially young women, of our age are getting diagnosed at 30 plus years old. And was not the case for me. I was 8 and my mom was a special educator and my dad is a psychiatrist. So they were very well versed in this, but still I didn't understand like what this meant. When I was in grad school, I had this really great opportunity and joined a consulting group and got into executive function coaching. And never in a million years would I would have ever thought like I could be my own boss. I could be running my own business, but being thrust into that situation. And then simultaneously, it all happened was found out I was pregnant, started my own business. I never thought I would be a special educator. Didn't think that was my calling, but I think just understanding more of like, whoa, my ADHD and anxiety play a huge role in my life, more so than I actually realized. And being able to work with individuals and just relate to them, build relationships, and help other people understand like life is going to be hard, but it doesn't have to be this hard. We can figure out ways to make it a little bit more manageable. Has just been really, really incredible. And I think maybe we'll get into this later, but I think also that's sort of how I got into executive function coaching. And I think recognizing that being able to be the adults in charge of me rather than working for someone else has definitely how my brain works is much more efficient and effective for me to do the things I need to do and can do bigger and better things than being told what to do.
Mallory, I'm dying because Christina,
Well,
and for the listener, I wonder if you'll remember this, Mallory. So, Mallory and I used to go to the same gym
oh, I know what
before
you're
the
gonna say.
pandemic.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
there's this one time she was telling me a story about school, and a bunch of kids came into her room and were like asking her for something. And she's like, I don't know, go find an adult. And then she like this realization of like, oh, wait, I am the adult. So
No,
when you said that,
it wasn't even that
that's
realization.
really
It was the
funny.
child said, "You are the adult," and I said, "Oh, well, go find
You
somebody
know,
else."
this is really funny because on my 40th birthday, which is today, I
Happy
also feel like
birthday.
I have to remind myself I'm the adult. Like, oh shit, I'm the adult now. It's here. I have a quick question, Mallory, for clarification, for like understand. I love hearing your story, and I can hear so much passion in you in the story and how you came to be into executive function coaching. But I'm really curious of what exactly does that look like, and what is executive function coaching, and what do you do with Band Together Education?
That's a great question. And I will also say, as you can notice, which is part of my ADHD, I talk a lot and try to get off. And so if I'm veering off, just bring me back to
I
center.
mean, we have a whole podcast for this, and the listeners are very familiar with how I go off on tangents. Friends, I also have been known to be like squirrel and then run down in a whole nother direction. I have literally said in the middle of this podcast, I've been going on for 10 minutes. Like, so don't,
You're doing
you're in
fine.
good company. We got this. We
Fantastic.
got
Okay,
this.
so in general, I work with like right now with this the load that I have, I think the youngest student in which I'm working with is in 5th grade, and then the oldest are parents, older than us adults. We are adults too, I guess, but older adults. And yeah, so right now I work one-on-one. So that's either in person, physically at a school or at someone's house. And then the other option is via Zoom. And it really depends what their goals are. And 99.9% of everyone with whom I work has ADHD and another comorbidity, which is very common for us ADHDers, where we'll have lots of things and is kind of intertwined. But we'll work on maybe for some of the younger students, whether that's middle school, of remembering, like, do I have the materials that I need to have from home to school? Am I able to get out of the house without mom or dad doing everything for me? And but for some people, it's do I brush my teeth every day? Am I remembering to shower? General hygiene. Maybe we're a parent who has ADHD and their children have ADHD, of how do we create routines and systems at home to make sure that we're modeling behavior that we want our children to be able to see and adapt to as well. So if we're emotionally dysregulated, our children are certainly going to be having those similar challenges too. And a lot of it too is like, yes, a lot of it we're working on planning and organizing, but a lot of it is how do we get ourselves to start? We know what we're supposed to do. We can't do it. It's not therapy. It's not like that, but it's also there's so much of the emotional piece tied in. We're humans, it's relational, it's how we feel about ourselves. So we're also talking about feelings of shame, inadequacy, overwhelm, ADHD paralysis. It's not just, oh, I want to get A's. How do I get A's? It's like, I don't really frankly care what your grades are if you don't have the skills to get there, because eventually homework stops. And it's the same thing. We need to be able to understand these are the tools. So the main goal is understand your brain, be able to accept your brain for what it is, and then be able to have tools, know how to use them, when to use them, where to use them, and why to use them.
Yeah. So, speaking of dysregulation, and you mentioned overwhelm and all these things that go along with executive function, we know that obviously ADHD and executive function have a big interplay, but they also play a significant role in different food related behaviors. So, in your experience, and whether that's personal or in your work with people, how do you see ADHD contributing to the development of or the interplay with disordered eating patterns?
Yeah, I'll speak from my own personal experience because that's what I know best. And it's so funny in that a lot of people like who were on stimulants or on some type of ADHD medication, or maybe not. I've just, oh, I forgot to eat today. I'm like, what? I've never missed a meal in my entire life. Like, I don't even understand how that's possible. Now I understand when I'm like focused on something, I will not be able to pull myself away from that. But I think this is something just looking back on my childhood. I think it's an interesting like parallel where I was clearly really uncomfortable in my body. I was always sort of a bigger kid. I was and would was getting made fun of. Like I can remember literally as early as like pre-K, like hated how I was like feeling, but then also at the time didn't know that I wasn't comfortable in my brain either. I remember, I guess it must have been a way to just cope, or even maybe it was seeking stimulation or stimming, going to find food. Like listen, couldn't even take the time to make something. I would take frozen Eggos, like go into the bathroom and just like eat them in private. I don't even know what type of like relief that was bringing, but it's the same, it's like literally the same thing as like the ADHD shame cycle with a different content of like, I'm feeling overwhelmed. I'm going to use food to take that away for 5 seconds and then feel bad. And at that point, it wasn't like I'm overeating because I was a child. I couldn't like make stuff. Even within probably 5 years ago, come Friday night, would just eat so much food, so many sweets, and then feel like physically ill. And it's like, in parallel, it's the same thing as the shame cycle of I need to start this homework assignment. I'm going to get started. I get started for 2 minutes, can't do it, get overwhelmed, stop, feel horrible about myself, stress out, go end up sitting on my phone for whatever it is. It's the same cycle of I want to do something, can't do it, doesn't feel good, don't have another coping mechanism or strategy of how to get through this, and then going to, use something that's definitely maladaptive.
Yeah. Something that you just said, well, one, thank you for sharing your personal story. I think a lot of people will be able to relate to it and the honesty and the vulnerability there, because something that I was thinking about as you were saying this is I'll speak for myself, but I imagine Dana, you're seeing this too, but I'm seeing a really large increase in my client load dealing with symptoms of ADHD but are presenting in food. And so they'll come to me and we'll start talking about this stuff. And just yesterday, I was having a conversation with a client of mine, and they just recently got diagnosed with ADHD. And we've been working together a lot about eating consistently throughout the day and making a schedule for themselves to make sure they eat easily accessible, all the things that we typically talk about a lot on here. If you've listened to any ADHD episode we've ever done, it's always going to go back to we're creating a system, guys, and here we go. But it was interesting. Yesterday was the first time that they opened up to me because of the amount of shame that they have about nighttime eating, and that they would basically be eating at night all over and over again throughout the night. But the way they described it as if I have this problem with food and I have a lot of shame and a lot of guilt around it. And the more we started to talk about it, and the more questions I start asking, like, well, does this mirror any other patterns that you have in your life or throughout the day? Like, what does this look like for you? And things like that. It was this feeling really trapped for a long time with this cycle of guilt and feeling impulsive. They felt impulsive about food at night. And then as we started talking about it, the amount of realization that they had in the moment when we finally started getting into it, and then they said to me, oh my God, this is my ADHD. And I said, yes, this is your ADHD. This is not a problem that you have with food itself. You're not like some unhinged person having this huge issue with food. Food is playing a role in this cycle in your ADHD. And even just that realization, you could see their shoulders drop a little bit. And the amount of compassion that they were able to have for themselves in that moment was really, really special. And so I feel like people who are hearing your story and hearing you talk about what it means to be an executive function coach and how you can help people, I think it's really important, because I think it so often it plays such a significant role in food related behaviors. And the thing that I kept hearing them say over and over again that made me be like, light bulb, this is ADHD, was they kept saying, I don't understand why I can't stop. They would just be like, I keep saying to myself, I want to stop. I want to stop doing this, but I can't stop doing it. I'm like, I want to start the laundry, but I can't start the laundry. And so I'm going to sit here and stew about the laundry. I'm like, it's not that dissimilar of a cycle. And so what you're talking about is that cycle for yourself. I see that. And it's almost like this really, I can imagine a really trapping type of feeling stuck between this cycle of ADHD that's feeding into guilt and all these things. And then we go towards things like food that makes us feel good. Or in that moment, like, oh my gosh, it feels good having something that feels satisfying. I'm getting a little dopamine hit. And then at the same time, you're feeding into this diet cycle that is like restricting and binging. And they're just like this perfect storm of feeling really hard on yourself. And I hope that if anyone's listening to this and relates to anything that you're saying, that I think throughout the whole thing is that I'd love for them to leave with a little bit more compassion for themselves and understanding that, okay, there are tools for helping you break out of this cycle. We're going to get into all of that. But I think the most important thing for people to notice is, hey, what you're struggling with food can sometimes also be compounded by your ADHD presentation. And I think I just wanted to say how important I think that is.
Yeah, I think that's
That's all.
no, I think that's completely spot on. And this is, I think, one thing that you said that got me thinking about something. It's so hard for a lot of the students with whom I work to get started on their homework, and certainly not knowing where to start. But even if, for example, if we have a plan, what one tiny piece we're supposed to do, like this is something I found very helpful is like having a time timer. So we like even just say, you're going to work for 5 minutes on writing.
Look how big that clock is.
Yes,
That timer's
I like
huge.
the
I love
tiny
it.
You
ones.
got to be able to see it.
But I think
Yeah,
But I
right?
sort we're gonna work for 5 minutes. If you wanna be done with homework after 5 minutes, that's fine. We're gonna just get started on working on coloring in blah, like whatever. And then if you wanna keep going, great, keep going. It's the same thing. And it's like in reverse of let's pause for 5 minutes, go do something else. And if you're still interested, great, let's engage with the snap, like whatever. That's obviously not what I did back then. But I think being like just making that connection of what you were saying, Christina, I think makes a lot of sense with what you said with the impulsivity. And again, it's almost like there's a lot of interplay between like the task initiation and also the follow through. I say I'm going to do this. Okay, come Monday, I'm going to start fresh again. And then 2 days later, and it's so much with the ADHD, you'll see all these things of like, I'm going to have a planner and get this and all these things. But I actually do love a planner and
You love a
love
planner.
all of that. But didn't know like, oh,
Our girl Dana.
yes,
All about a
didn't
planner.
know that impulsivity could also be like buying things. That was also something I learned in the past. I was like, oh my gosh, that's where I'm getting a lot of it. So maybe it like shifted from, okay, not using food as much, but then it's still like finding something else.
So you mentioned, using the clock was like a fantastic example, and I'm sure I can. I'll ask you for like the link to that, and we'll put
Yeah.
it in the show notes and stuff. But what are some of the other really helpful tools? Let's say specifically with like task initiation or reminders that you find are super helpful for the people that you work with.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great question. So I think in terms of reminders, and I also recognize I do this too. If you don't see it, it doesn't exist. So the food in your fridge, like there's so the ADHD caught the tax that we spend so much money on stuff we don't even remember that it exists. Ooh, what the heck? Like this broccoli's been back here for 3 months, whatever. So I think it has to be some type of visual and auditory cue where it is going to become automatic. Like it has to be in your face somehow, So I think there's a great opportunity to use technology, but I think at the same point we become numb to it. Sometimes where like the alarm goes off and we just turn it off. So having things like, for me, like I don't find the reminders app to be helpful. So for example, different apps that maybe will give you a buzz, or even having Google Calendar on your phone, where it gives you an alert at a specific time. We found it to be very helpful with certain individuals to get started with their homework of having a specific alarm set that's labeled that has a 10-minute warning, knowing we need transition time. But then also at the same time, so we have that cue, but underlyingly or more foundational, we have to have a system set up. So that means if you don't know what you're supposed to do, you don't have the materials out, that's going to waste so much time in the transition. So also trying to work on minimizing kind of the transition time loss as well as the decision fatigue. There are a lot of different apps geared toward people with ADHD. I'll say for me, I'm much more of a paper person. So I think just having like for me, sometimes even having a whiteboard, which I have right here, where it's in my face to remember, and like color coding. I'm one of those people that I think, Data, you probably are too, where it's like, okay, Zoom sessions are in blue, in person is in green, pink are calls, like purple or extra, whatever it is. That is just really helpful for me. So those are some of the ways. I think a lot of the younger people are very into using technology. So I think if we can find a way, we're just keep it simple. We don't need a whole complex thing. The more steps there are, the harder it is to be able to follow through with it. So if it's going to take 30 minutes to get started, that's probably too much we have going on here.
You sounded like such an older person when you were like, a lot of
Oh,
the
yeah.
young people are into using technology.
And I will say,
I mean, I like it.
I feel so old. I don't want to say like my favorite group, but I really do love so much working with my college students. And I still feel like, oh, I graduated like last year, and they probably think I'm like 70. And it's so funny. Like just I've never felt so old when they're talking about
If my
things.
If my teen clients knew that I was 40 today, they'd be like, "You are a boomer." Mallory, I can't help but notice that you have really cute little baby pictures in the back. People who are listening, you obviously can't see. But I'm really curious as a parent with ADHD, and it sounds like you also have your own history with healing your relationship with food. And I imagine probably like body image stuff comes up. Hello, we're women in America. It happens. It's there. But there's also a lot of times I talk to parents and other parents who have this real fear of modeling disordered behavior for their kids. And it can really feel overwhelming, especially if you're dealing with ADHD and these types of patterns. How can they work on breaking those habits without slipping into shame or perfection? Like how would you recommend or how would you support a parent working through that who really wants to not model those types of behaviors for the youngins?
Yeah, I mean, I think speaking from a personal point of view, I don't think that I've fully 100% mastered that, but I think that is really helpful in the fact that I do feel like I've made much more significant progress that really seems to be sticking because everything is so much more serious now, where
Mm.
there is a little guy looking around seeing everything. And it's so funny because he started cussing because hears things that are not being said by me, but like he just at a play date the other day said the F word 10 times in a row and starts cackling. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it was
That is amazing.
hilarious. But like, no, we cannot, no. Like, so it is definitely not me. But I think
Don't look at me, guys.
yeah, I think, I don't wanna be in a place where it's like we're at a birthday party and mom's never eating, but, like, why is mom, like, eating a different thing? Or, like, why is mom bringing her own food? Or, like, why is mom like, I don't want to be like that, and I think for me, it's really hard because I know, like, for me, food is so much, and I think for a lot of people, so, like, part of the culture of, like, it is, like, a family-related thing where it's, like, celebrations and so important and stuff. So I think one thing that it's all so simple, it's not easy to do, and it's the same thing with everything ADHD. Not hard, it really is not hard. It's very simple, it's just really hard to do, but it's very simple.
Yeah.
So I think, like, certain things, like, if Miles is his way of showing empathy, of trying to give me his food, and it's like in the past, I'd be, "Oh my gosh, that's like 1.02 extra calories, I can't have that." So it's like trying to, I guess, for me to get over some of the things too, and it definitely is from my dad with, like, where they grew up, and it's like, "You have to eat everything on your plate, it's wasteful, like, you can't throw anything out." My dad is like, "The kid, nothing from 19 whatever 65 has been thrown out, whatever." And so I think it's like, okay, you don't have to eat the food that's left on the tray. But if he gives you something, it's okay to engage in that. That's not going to ruin your day. Or I think also feeling there were definitely certain things like back where I definitely didn't recognize orthorexia. I think that was definitely part of too. It was like the cycle was like binging Friday through Saturday night, Sunday, and then just going, like, working out so much because it's so much of the ADHD too, where it's all or nothing, black and white thinking. So if I can't stick to the routine 100%, screw it, like, I'm done. And that's the same thing where it's even this sounds so silly, but it's been really hard this week where, like, I am training for a trail race and I haven't been able to run because I'm running outside and I'm, like, not trying to break my ankles in the
In the
snow.
snow. Yeah.
And so
In the
in the
ice,
ice,
yeah.
so it's like in the past, that literally would have led to going to find food to, like, make me feel like to find something else because something got shifted, and that's so much of the ADHD too. I'm not saying things don't pop up anymore with just some of the anxiety and fear around food, but now it's like, I think because being a mom, there's so much to do, and I don't even have the mental capacity. It's like I have to eat now because otherwise there is no time. You have to, like, be able to take things as they are, and it's gonna be what it's gonna be. And I think it's better to be at like 75 to 80% of like good stuff going on, quote unquote good stuff, where because I feel like when I'm working out or when I'm eating, I feel like I'm able to be a better mom. Like, I just feel better about myself when my body feels good. Because if I'm hungry, like, I'll get to the end of the day and I'm, like, so angry, and Andrew's like, "You need to eat." And then I'm, like, happy again. And it's just, like, being mindful of you gotta take care of yourself And it's not going to be perfect, but I think just even obviously Miles is not at the age where he's understanding these things, but at some point just being open about this is how things were, this is working through things. But in terms of executive function coaching, it's just helping individuals realize whatever it is, even if it's not the same challenge, you are not the only one. Cause I think we feel so alienated where it's like, I don't even want to talk about it because it's so embarrassing to talk about. But it's like, I bet other people could relate to X, Y, or Z thing in some type of other shade or hue.
Yeah. Mallory, what I'm really hearing from you as you're talking about this and sharing the things that you're seeing come up, and I think a lot of parents can relate. One of the things that I'm really taking from it is one, doing the best you can to model this and try to have a better relationship with food in your body. And then the other part from like an ADHD standpoint that I'm really taking from it is that the ways to support your habits that make you feel good and make you be able to eat consistently throughout the day, have easily accessible foods available, and being able, because that is ultimately modeling, right? A positive relationship with food and your body by deciding, okay, what are the things, and we talk about these as like our non negotiables, like what are our non negotiables? And then how do I prioritize that for myself, even as a parent? That even when the wheels get off the bus, right, and they can get off the bus real quick, but even when they do, I know that these are my non-negotiables. And what I'm hearing from you is that your non-negotiables are eating consistently throughout the day, making sure that you're having things prepped and available for yourself, and also prioritizing time for you to move your body throughout the week because that's really important to you. And it helps you show up as a mom the way that you want to, and then you get to model a more positive relationship with your body and with food and a relationship with food for your children, which I think ultimately keeps us from slipping down into that shame and perfectionism. Because what I'm hearing is a lot of compassion and a lot of what's the word I'm looking for? A lot of like, even though even though we want a system, there's also flexibility for when things don't go quite as right. And it's not something like, oh man, I fucked up and now I'm to shit and everything's gonna be bad and whatever. Now it's like, all right, tomorrow's a new day. Today got a little wonky. I only had the leftover chicken nuggets and a couple bites of the mac and cheese for lunch. Not my favorite move, not my favorite lunch, eating my kids' cold leftovers. I'd like to spend an extra 10 minutes tonight prepping a little something for myself, putting it available so I have something available so that I can eat with my kids and not eat their leftovers and have like a system in place. And that's like ultimately what I'm hearing because otherwise, like you said, like it can become really overwhelming, right? All of the different steps because trying to think about what you're going to prepare and make for yourself to have, plus what you're preparing and making for your kids to have. And it's just like it just becomes too much. Think about everyone's preferences and desires, what people are in the mood for. My kids are like, I don't want that. It's like, well, now what?
E- Exactly.
Plan D now. Like I don't know what we're gonna do now. So yeah, I really appreciate you sharing all that. And I think like that you in the way that you described it, you're sharing how you're modeling more positive relationship with food and with your body, even though you're still working on it, which I think is ultimately what we're all doing. No one's gone to the other side of the rainbow and never has like any issues with this. There's new ways of disruption that come up. And so I really appreciate the way you shared it.
Thank you. No, I appreciate that. And I think one other thing too, like in the mornings, whatever I'm eating for breakfast, he will want no matter, even if it's like, if that looks disgusting and yours looks so much better. It's something that we can do together and also feeling good about what I'm eating and knowing that. So I think it's like, it is a nice little ritual too. And literally nothing fancy, but it's like just whatever I'm eating, he will just start digging into my plate or bowl rather than what he has. We can feel good both about what we're eating. Of course he's gonna be digging into my plate and wanting it. So being able to like enjoy that and just have like the social part around food too, where it doesn't matter what it is, as long we've got the healthy nutrients and really protein. But for him, it's like I want him to have everything. He needs the fuel. He's gonna be moving all the time, like burning through so much energy, and his brain is growing so much. Like there's so much happening up there. So feeling good about like what he's eating is really nice. But there are some nights where he literally wants like gummy bunnies and that's all he's gonna eat. And I'm like, what are we gonna do? What are we gonna do here? And it is hard. It is hard because it's like you have the plan of like, oh, I made you this nice thing with like chicken and vegetables and this and that. And it's like, I just want
And then
the
they throw it
treat.
across the room.
Yeah, he likes, but yeah, he does like a good smoothie, which is nice.
Amazing. Well, we both wanted to thank
My kids
you
love gummies.
so much for
Love
coming
Yes.
on, Mallory. This is a great conversation. I know it'll be so helpful for so many of the listeners. And I think we're just going to have you come back on so we can talk more about like the GI stuff and get more into food because I love to talk about GI stuffs. Thank you again for coming on. And please tell people where they can find you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. That was a lot of fun. Sorry for the direction in which my
Do not be sorry.
tangential
Yeah,
conversations
nothing to be sorry about.
went on.
Mallory, stop. No apologizing.
That is also an ADHD
Stop you right
thing.
there.
Yes, so
You're wonderful and brilliant, and we loved having you on. End of story.
thank you. I appreciate that. Likewise. My website is bandtogethereducation.com, which you can find a lot more about the services that I offer. And even if you're just looking for free resources, a lot of articles and other podcasts and things that I've done are up there. And on Instagram, that's Mallory B _ ADHD. And yeah, you can find some more articles and lots of posts going on there. And my email is at info@bandtogethereducation.com. So if you're interested in keeping the conversation going, I'd be happy to chat.
Wonderful.
Amazing.
Thank
you
you
so much.
Thank you guys.
Okay.